Hi, I'm Aaron McPollen. I'm a fashion, beauty and art photographer. I specialise in doing portraiture, videography and also one-on-ones. When I say one-on-ones, that's about finding the individual and finding the imagery that you can capture of that person as their true self. To do that, there's lots of different techniques we can do. What I'd like to talk about today are those techniques. So, it's all about creating truth, creating story, creating narrative. When you're looking at someone, it's finding things about them that they enjoy about themselves. Usually it might be a certain way they pose, might be a certain way they interact with you. It could be something that you find defining of their character. For me, I usually find that by talking to them, sitting them down face to face like this, asking about their day, asking about their past, asking about their experiences. It's about breaking down those barriers between one person and another, especially when you haven't met them. You probably haven't met them for a few minutes. You might have maybe organised a session maybe weeks beforehand. You might even know that person quite intimately. Either or, they're still the same. Your interaction with that person will really show up within a lens. The lens, for some reason, when you put it in front of someone, they change. They put up a wall, a defence. Even myself right now, I could probably say I am doing that as well. But eventually we forget that the camera is there and we start to really connect with the person. Sometimes I'll keep the camera up, but I'll just keep on talking and photograph as I'm talking. By doing this, you gain an engagement. It's all about also asking open questions rather than closed questions. So rather than saying, how was your day? What have you been up to today and how did it make you feel? What are you most proud of creating this week? When was the last time you saw your mum and what did you do? Things like that. What's your favourite biscuit? It could be anything that's quite as silly as that. Being on set for shooting fashion and creating a mood or an aesthetic towards a brief can be a different story. You're not photographing for a say personality of them so much as you are towards the narrative and a brief given at hand. They can go into the forms of acting and playing a role or getting someone into the mindset. Say, if you had a brief that was based on the punk era, for instance, you might want to be having a good discussion with your model or with your team beforehand and have them get into that mindset, having music on set that creates that mood, having visual mood boards for them to preview and look at. And you can also then get with your makeup artist, your hair artist, your fashion designer, your art director if you have one as well, being on set to communicate this with them to actually engage and play out those roles. Also adding in their own character. I find that when you actually are working with models for a certain theme, you would pick a model that kind of ties in with whatever target market you're going towards or even the, say, narrative you're trying to engage with. Often enough you'll have to cater and tweak and work with that. But often enough you'll actually find as well as that the person that you've brought in suits that role. And it's very, very, very fun to see them bloom into it and develop and really engage with you within the camera and within that creative sphere. I might be doing a bit of a ramble, a bit of a rant right now, but I'm waiting to actually do an interview with someone else and I thought I'd just test out the camera because I've actually never done this before myself. It's quite funny being behind the lens for 10 years but never actually been in front of it that much. I think it's time to probably change that during these times. So when I've been on set, I find that it's very important to know your team. Your team is everything. It's not just about yourself as a photographer, it's not just about the model, it's also about everyone who's engaged with that person before they actually get in front of the camera. You're creating that mood, you're creating that aesthetic, you're creating everything that goes into that moment, you're creating snippets of that moment. And that moment needs to be perfect. Well, not necessarily perfect, it needs to be engaging in the narrative that you're playing out. So, say for instance that I've created a design, or I'm working along with a designer who's got a backstory to one of the pieces. I would want to know all the history of that. I then want to do some research with them alongside them, and then developing with them a shoot that is plausible, possible, and then is open. I think having closed shoots or closed-mindedness on set is very, very toxic. It can stop growth, it can stop you getting dreamy and experimenting. I usually like to book an extra bit of extra time, either out of my own accord or if the client actually would like to pay for it as well. And during that time I call it experimentation. It's an hour where we allow ourselves to actually get creative. We allow the makeup artist to explore the story more. We allow the hair artist to explore as well. Then we let the model explore this narrative and this mood and this character they're created in their head. And by doing that on set, I find it really lets people bloom into something else and create something very unique and different. Often enough, those being the images that the client tends to pick, which is quite funny. I also really, really enjoy working alongside teams and learning their strengths. My strengths are very different to, say, a makeup artist's strength or a hair artist's strength or an art director's strength or whoever you might be having me on set. And working as a team to develop those ideas and allowing them to exist cohesively. I think we should definitely be engaging with one another and allowing each other to experiment. I don't mind someone coming into my domain and saying, can we try this because that might suit my makeup better or my design better or my garment better. I'm all open for that. I think that it should be fluid. I think it should be a way of engaging and creating. I got into photography originally because it was the best way to tell stories. I used to be a portrait artist. I can't draw for shit anymore. And when I was drawing it, I was really trying to capture the person in front of me, but I just couldn't do it as well as I can with a camera. And I think there's something solitude about being a traditional artist than there is to being a photographer. I'm a very people person. I like to engage with people. I like to learn about people. I like to learn about stories and people, creations that people craft. I really enjoy watching people express and create and develop and really put out new ideas to shape either their reality or other people's reality. I find that extraordinary. I really do. So for me, photography was the avenue that I went down. And now videography seems to be another one that opens a whole new kettle of fish, really, where we can just explore more and more and more. And it's becoming more accessible day by day. And I think that's wonderful. Thank you.